Hello to all you patriots out there in podcast land, and welcome to episode 383 of Canadian Patriot Podcast, the number one live podcast in Canada, recording February 6th, 2023. Sorry, I had to look at my watch there for a second. On to, well, I guess, yeah, here, do your spiel.
We need your help to support the Canadian Patriot Podcast. Visit patreon.com/CPP and become a Patreon and get a better quality version of the show for just $1 per episode. Show you're not a communist. Buy a CPP t-shirt for just $24.99 plus shipping and theft. Visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com homepage and follow the link on the right.
Excellent. And now our favorite segment of the show, although lately it's been somewhat boring for some of us.
It's still my favorite.
Yeah. And that's why we keep having you on. As is tradition, we will start with Liz. Liz, what are you drinking? And what is at least one thing that you've done off of the Patriot Challenge?
Okay, well, I am a little boring these days. Water.
Solid choice.
It has nothing to do with the, challenges that you boys are up to. I don't even begin to attempt that. But as you can maybe tell, my voice is a little hoarse. I kind of got in with some of all the sicknesses that are going around. And I was like an epic mouth breather for 2 days and it wrecked my voice. So.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I've had a tickle in the back of my throat that I've been fighting for the last couple of days, but I'm holding firm to I'm not getting sick. So
yeah, I mean, honestly, it didn't really change my life. I just have this tendency to get like sinus problems.
Yeah.
At the quickest change of the weather or whatever. So my nose was like just congested. So anyways, all that being said, this is what the 30s look like. This is what when you're in your 30s you do is take care of yourself.
Can't confirm.
All
Wait
the
till you get into your
herbals.
40s. Yeah.
Yeah. All the herbals and all the things to make me still function as a human.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, Patriot Challenge. I've done a few things, but it's just been a little hectic. So I'm not the best at time management. But a skill I'm learning is managerial finance.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good job.
Super exciting. I'm enjoying it. Here, what about you?
As per tradition, I'm drinking whiskey and then more whiskey when I'm done this cup.
Also a solid choice. Yeah.
Yeah. Patriot Challenge. I got the week 3 challenge, ruck challenge in. Thankfully, I was planning on doing it a day that everything worked out, but no heat, had to do this and that. And that crazy ass cold fucking snap. I was like, I'm not going for a fucking hour, 15-minute walk. Like, I'm like, the dogs could barely make it like off the deck and like lift their leg before they're freezing. I was like standing at the back door. I was like, hurry up. Like, yeah, it was just brutal. I had a lot more time then, but yeah, got it in on the Sunday with the weather. Called it early from work a little bit. Got a few extra things done.
Sunday was a good day to get out and go for a ruck. It was very nice out.
Yeah,
it was nice. It was a little bit of blowing snow here and there, and since I walk on the road not too far from where I am, there's a very short sidewalk, and then the rest of it's just country roads. But like the sides were a little slippery, and like,
Yeah.
Oh, there's a vehicle coming, and you walk towards the traffic, and then 1 foot kind of goes for a slip here and there, and you start doing that weird dance like in the cartoon.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, you're pretty much like walking in the middle of the road hoping you don't get hit and then when there's vehicles you kind of moved out of the way. But yeah, I got that done. Got to practice some more, a few extra skills today. I had to take the plasma cutter and then the newish welder out. Well, new, only used it a few times, but got to take the plasma cutter out and do some welding and cutting with some metal stuff. So that was a lot of fun.
Nice.
sounds like a lot of fun.
It's so much fun. What about you, Gavin?
Well, shockingly, I am drinking water this evening. I know, big surprise to everybody. I'm day 35 of 75 hard completed today.
That's epic. Good for
Um,
you.
That's almost halfway.
Yeah, I did
Yeah.
the math, and I believe it's March 19th, so just after St. Patrick's Day,
Yeah.
is when I will be able to have a beverage and eat whatever it is that I want for at least a day. Um,
What's the diet that you're
low
adhering
carb,
to?
like low carb. Most days I'm like keto, but if I go over by like
Sure.
a gram or two, like I don't really care because I'm not being that strict, but I am like aiming for 20 grams of carbs a day,
Damn.
and most days
Yeah.
I'm under that. The odd day I'm like 23 or 24 or something because
No.
whatever, but like yeah, so low carb. Managed to get week 3 of the Ruck Challenge in and week 4. So yes, I hear you on the time management side of things because that was like I'm on the road again for work. So like doing a Ruck
Sure.
Challenge while I'm on the road is not easy because I'm not bringing my backpack with me. So getting my 2 workouts a day in is hard enough when they
Yeah.
monopolize all my time. Trying to go for a longer walk and a backpack isn't happening. So yeah, I was like, okay, if I get week 3 done early in the week, I can get week 4 done ahead of time.
Yeah.
Because I also need to get week 5 in ahead of time because I will be away the following week as well.
My goodness.
So yeah, all of the time management. So I guess I was practicing that skill as well. And then yeah, having the -30 day that popped
Oh.
up was like, well, I'm gonna have to go for a walk outside for 75 hard that day anyways, but I really don't want to
Yeah.
make it the long walk. So trying to plan exercising around the weather and everything else made it yeah, just one more
Yeah, I
thing
forgot
to
about that.
contend with.
You're what, 45 minutes at least once outside, right? So those 2 days
Yeah.
must have been really fucking, I mean, you probably got the weather gear and everything, and I'm like, you can stay warm, but it's just really shitty to get like all bulked up and
Yeah,
go do
I mean,
whatever and come back.
I put my like I've got like a winter Gorka, for those that know what that is. It's like a Russian winter suit.
Okay.
So it's like
It's
bib
like I don't know if
overalls.
anybody's actually ever heard of the word Gorka.
Yeah, if you're into Russian things, you've heard of
Okay.
it.
No, weren't those the ones
but
in the
it's-
Fifth Element too? Weren't those the?
Yeah, I can't remember
think
what they
Gorkas-
had, but like it has like bib overall, like
Oh, cool. Okay.
snow pants, and then like a parka jacket. So I
Nice.
mean, I had like a t-shirt and just like a pair of silkies on under it because it was
So
like
you looked like you were going fishing.
basically it looked like I was going ice fishing
Yeah.
to go for a walk, but like almost nothing underneath it. And I mean, for a good chunk of the walk, I had to like undo the jacket and open up the bib
Really?
overalls because they zip down the front, which is convenient because I was starting to overheat, even though it was
Yeah.
-30 with the wind.
That's
Yeah.
good, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
so
know.
I gotta
Yeah,
find. I gotta find a better athletic layer for that. Like I've got almost every other temperature dialed in to what the appropriate level of clothing is so that I'm not freezing, but I'm not overheating. It's just when you're like, it's
doing physical stuff.
-30, like that's fucking cold.
Yeah.
So
What I have found in that kind of situation, maybe not that cold, but so obviously I was telling you I'm wearing yoga pants right now.
yeah,
So yoga pants are a really good like base layer, but same with like, I don't know, I've definitely used like rash guard and spats before under
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah,
But if you
that's
get a if
more
you
or
get a
less, yeah.
yeah,
Like that
like
is
it's
a rash guard as a t-shirt kind of a
Yeah.
thing, and then a
well, but
sweater.
it's like
But it
a
was
weather, it's a moisture wicking kind of material,
Yeah.
so it's good that way. But you can also go to like Canadian Tire or something simple like that, and they've got some like kind of fuzzy lined hunting
yeah.
long
Well, I
johns.
mean, it was
And
yeah,
they're pretty, like I'm saying that they're pretty good to just put under like splash pants so that there's
Well,
not
that's
like
what
an
I
over
normally
insulation, but it's
do.
still
Like
dry.
these are great for -30 when I'm
Mm.
sitting around doing
Sure.
nothing. Like I don't feel the
Yeah.
cold at all. And like normally it's like -10, -15 even. Like I'll just have like a really thin layer of long johns and then just
Yeah.
like like waterproof like Gore-Tex
Pants,
rain
yeah.
pants.
Yeah.
And because it's the wind that makes you cold more than anything else, or like if you get wet. So
So,
like being dry and no
your-
wind
Do
is
your
fine.
Gore-Tex pants, do they block the wind really well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they work
Yeah,
just
they're-
like windbreaker.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's
that's
just like
Okay.
triple the price.
yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say
no,
I've got slush pants that are, Walmart type brand. So
Yeah. I mean,
Are they,
these
are they
ones,
the ones from the 90s though?
no, they're not that
Like
cool.
the matching windbreaker jacket?
No, like
Oh.
no.
yeah. So like,
No.
yeah, when I went for my ruck the other day on Wednesday, so before the cold snap, that's basically all I had was like a pair of silkies on, and then those slush like Gore-Tex
Yeah.
layer pants. And I even had to like yank those up to my knees because my legs were getting warm.
So you were pretty much wearing a sauna suit.
Well,
while
it was,
hiking.
I mean, I was moving pretty good. And
Yeah,
like,
that's fair.
but I mean, it was just above freezing, I guess. But it was like, it looked like it was going to rain. And I was like, I don't want to get like soaked.
I don't
So
blame
yeah,
you. I
Yeah.
don't blame you.
if it had warmed up like another degree or two, I probably would have just been in the shorts and been fine.
I have this, is it like is the brand LL Bean or Patagonia?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's one of the two. They're kind of similar, like, and it's
Yeah.
just like a throw over. But it's like really thin. And it, for some reason, it is like, it's slightly quilted, but it's like an amazing top. It's keeps you super warm, but it's like really thin. It's like as thin as a windbreaker.
Those are key.
Yeah.
If you're
I
gonna
know.
do anything in those crappy weather situations, like my decision was thankfully different than Gavin's. Gavin's was like, I have to go outside. I was like, fuck that, I'm not going anywhere.
Sure.
Right? Like I had that option, but like, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
but I mean, at the same time, like to get really decent, standby, good quality, clothing or
Yeah.
material for whatever, there is a big cost associated, like that really, really cheap stuff is like, but to go from that cheap stuff to like a good quality stuff that, is good to do at -30, you can go for a walk, and as long as you're covered up, you're good. Like there's a big cost association with that, which is
Yeah.
crazy that there's no in between, like maybe one that's like, you'd be good at -20, -30, you might feel the wind, but like you might be able to stay warm. Like there's no in between. It's either the really cheap stuff or the really expensive stuff.
Yeah.
Kind of sucks for that.
I agree. So right, Gavin, you might be succumbing to that.
Nope.
Okay.
Positive mental attitude.
No, it's
Vitamin
just he's got
C.
there's
Yeah.
there's some incense burning in the back, right? It's just
There-
the
there-
incense.
there's probably a ton of it burning right now. That's Angela's
That's
thing.
funny.
News? Should we talk about the news?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
guess-
if anybody wants listener feedback, you just
Yes.
gotta email,
Yeah.
go to the website, CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. You'll find a feedback tab, or an email.
Yeah.
That's the best way to provide feedback.
Yeah. Positive or negative. It's been a while.
Positive or negative, yeah, those are good too. I don't think there's only a couple people that actually check like the Gilded app for feedback. So, again,
Yeah.
go to the website. That's probably the best.
Better Andrew, or other Andrew, as regular Andrew calls him, is frequently on there. So he
Yeah, he
will
is. He's
will
pretty
send
good
us
at it.
the feedback if we don't get it.
He's actually really good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess the big
Also, sorry to
no,
interrupt,
no.
but I'll actually say this, and as a call out, and somebody who's not in this ruck challenge, that's something to note, is that I heard that there was a whole bunch of people on the socials and stuff like that, and active listeners that started the ruck challenge, and there's very few of them that have fulfilled obligations as of this
Well,
week.
I mean, this one's going better. Well, the attrition rate on this one is less than it was on the first one. It's mainly panelists that have started and then stopped. Ian, Peter, not to name names or anything.
Oh, and I was
Make
on
them
the
feel
To be
last
guilty.
fair, I didn't
but-
even start it. I didn't even start
Well, that's
it.
why
'Cause
you're not
every
getting
other
called
time-
out. That's why
Every
you're not
other
getting
time, I
called
will
out.
call myself out. Every other time, I have failed miserably. So I was like, nope, not happening. Not doing
Yeah,
it.
I even went and did one with Ian the other day, and oh well.
He did say
Yeah.
that he got sick too, though,
Yeah.
didn't he?
Yeah, no, he's recovering from the plague as well. So
Yeah.
there you go. But yeah,
Well, I think just like, I don't know.
yeah,
It's kind of a rough season, but I mean it's exciting and it's a good
Yeah.
thing. And I mean, like
Yeah.
I guess even if you miss one, just like jump back into the challenge.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
There's
missing one doesn't mean
No.
mean total failure. Like you just
no,
keep
absolutely.
going. I know that for sure. Because
Yeah.
these guys are accommodate me fairly often. So,
Yeah, no, I
And I
mean
mean-
it's one of those things. Like it's if you don't like the only person losing is you. And if you
Yeah.
think that not going out and doing it one time means you can't go out and do the other ones, then clearly you don't listen to the subcontext of the show. Like just
Yeah.
get out there and unshitty yourself, as Tim would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
That's a
mean,
legit statement.
We've just started week 4. So if you all of a sudden decide that now's the time, if you can try and squeeze in, 2 over the next few weeks, we'll
Yeah.
probably accommodate,
Yeah.
that to throw you in, just because you missed the first week doesn't mean it's not feasible. A few people have done it where, life got busy and they did 2, 3 in the same week.
Yeah.
Gavin just did his early, right? Like,
Yeah.
life goes on. And I mean,
Yeah.
if it's just that, like, oh, well, I'm going to be busy during 1 week, or, I missed 2 weeks. And it's like, you can make up for it, man. If
Absolutely.
you really
And I
want.
mean, like, not to like be that guy, but like if I could do this and 75 hard and everything
Yeah.
else that I'm doing, like, not that you have no excuse, but like you can do this.
Well, and I
I mean,
think
life gets in the way, and I'm not saying that this is easy because it has
Sure.
certainly been a pain in my ass, especially while traveling and like exhausting at times. I'm just a stubborn asshole. So
but here's the thing, and this is something interesting that I think a lot of people don't talk about enough, is that you have to be willing, like it is hard.
Yeah.
Like you have to be in a mindset that's like, hey, I have to kind of prioritize some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And every time I've started and not finished, it's because I didn't prioritize it. That's reality.
no,
Right?
absolutely. And like sometimes, yeah, those priorities aren't there and you got to do other things because
Sure.
life. But I mean, that's the other thing as well, is that like, then when things do slow down, you do have the time, prioritize it. If it's something that you want, if it's not something you want to do,
Yeah.
then don't worry about it.
Yeah. But also, to the defense of those people, they can have whiskey and beer where you can't.
There's a lot of things.
'Cause of the
that
stuff
But you
Gavin's
can
doing.
prioritize not
Yeah.
drinking.
Yeah.
If rubbing is easier with a flask, like nobody said you shouldn't.
You don't have to do
Yeah.
it sober.
Yeah.
It's not one of the requirements.
It's true. And I know a few people that generally will go and have drinks before, during, or after, or all three.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, like I'm relatively new to this crew. I think I'm gonna call myself as part of your crew. But I don't know. I guess I've been on this podcast just about a year.
Yeah.
And I've gone on a couple of like group hikes with you guys, and there is always at least one liquor break. The first time that happened, I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay.
Yeah, there's usually like parking lot beers at the end or something, or
Yeah.
like if it's a longer one, like
Allegedly,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
them.
yeah, in places that allow it.
Obviously.
Yeah,
Yeah. Obviously.
yeah. We would never condone doing anything illegal
Absolutely.
ever.
Never. Speaking about illegal things, what's going on with the news?
Well, I guess there was a big announcement earlier in the week.
Yeah.
So C21, as you've heard us complain about several times, and
Often.
how it's a big old steaming turd that does nothing other than
Sure.
go after the people they claim to not. The Liberals retracted sections of C21. So the amendments G4 and G46 specifically were retracted. So what does that mean? G4 was the amendment that defined what assault style firearms are, even though, you know, that's a manufactured term with no real meaning. So that amendment equated to a sweeping semi-auto gun ban. And then amendment G46 was the list with over 300 pages of guns being added to the ban. So
Yeah,
interesting.
so here's my thing. Like, of the gist of what I've kind of read, like, I didn't get into it quite like you did, obviously, Gavin, or
Yeah.
some other people. But here's the way that I see it, which is, you know, not gospel, but they did a pretty good job of inflating and creating a nonsense bill, a nonsense situation. They danced around it for a while. And then they're like, oh, okay, we're going to listen to the people. Pulled some stuff off the table to make the people feel better and feel like they won. But in reality, we've still lost a whole list of firearms.
Absolutely.
So anybody that thinks that we've been, you know, successful in anything to do with C21, please don't stick your head down that hole, because that your head in the sand is not going to help anything. And
Yeah.
don't stop fighting. Like, the amount of effort that was put into these amendments getting pulled off the table, continue that effort. Because, you know, like, the average person, if you don't already have your pistols, if you don't already have certain firearms that, you know, even still, those firearms could still be confiscated. But, you know, like, all that stuff.
And that's one of my big issues with this bill C21 going through, right? Like, we had the CCFR going for many things because of the OIC and everything. And like, I'm happy that bill C21 didn't go through, but I was kind of hoping that it would get dragged out a little bit longer and, like, you know, end up maybe in a worse scenario. And the only, and trust me, I'm the last person that says anything that gun rights and laws and everything is right.
Sure.
But the only reason I'm going to say that is because, you know, so they put a bill forward saying that, you know, hey, we're going to take your shotgun away and your Ruger 1022 that you go, you know, bunny hunting with. And then all these people came out of the woods, right?
Yeah.
Hey, that's not right. That's not this. That's not that, or whatever, right? The only reason there was way more support on anything to do with this compared to the OIC
Yeah.
and the CCFR challenge or whatever is because it directly affects them, right?
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
all those fucking FUDs, you know,
Yeah.
we're like, oh my God, you're
Yeah.
coming after, you know, my 12 gauge. So like now they're all up in arms or whatever. And
Yeah.
I'm really hoping that now that all this was pushed away, that, like, because they saw the writing on the wall with this going through, that, you know, we all know people that own firearms for hunting, right? So they've got a shotgun they take out once, twice a year, and the deer gun they put, you know, 2 rounds sighting it in before they go hunting and rarely ever shoot a deer or whatever. And that's fine. I'm not saying you need to shoot more, but it's like, you know, people that have, you know, invest all this money, you know, building guns, doing 3-gun, you know, service rifle, IPSC, all that, like, there's no chance of getting new people into all these shooting programs. And it's like, you know, all you guys got to keep your guns now, you know, are you going to come stand with us now?
So,
I mean, I say
Yeah.
us as in just people that want to support the OIC thing. Like,
Well,
I was stupid
yeah,
and didn't
and
do my
that's-
restricted, so I don't have anything, but it's
That's-
just infuriating.
That's my, like, that was the one positive thing when this whole thing went forward, is that finally, for once, gun owners were united, because they were literally coming after all of us. So while them taking out these amendments is a good thing, it's
Yeah.
also a horrible thing for us, because now, like,
All that support is
there were
gone.
too many people, including the gun organizations, that were going, stop coming after our hunting rifles. And so now that they're not coming after our hunting
Right.
rifles,
Yeah.
it's
so
like, oh, okay, so now all this, the wind's been taken out of our sails, and like this is when we absolutely need to like not back off, but like hammer on the gas and be like, haha, no,
Yeah.
don't take any of our guns. And hopefully the
like-
momentum keeps up, and the people that
Yeah.
were only stepping up to the plate now because they were directly affected, because yeah, they had some
Yeah.
obscure single shot rifle that was on the list because that happens to also have one in like 50 cal or 460 Weatherby or something, right?
Yeah, like the worst part is like, okay, if all these people go away, like where do you see IPSC and IDPA in 20 years from
Yeah.
now? If
So-
nobody can buy a new handgun, a
No,
bunch of
so
grandpas
there's-
walking around, or
right. So there
there's
is
no new
like,
people.
there's a couple of things about that specifically, but I couldn't help but think of, how people were like in this together during COVID, and then all of
Yeah.
a sudden when the mandates happened, everybody was like, F that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So like that's the first thing that came to my
Yeah.
mind. But to your point, Pierre, there is some people, and I don't actually have I don't have any like documentation backing this up. I've just kind of heard whispers around the range and stuff, that there is going to be some advocacy groups, whether it's the CSSA or whatever operates like IPSC or whatever, that is going to be advocating to get special provisions for sport shooting under the terms of like Olympic or like,
Well, and
it-
so that's the hope, is that like under
Yeah.
C21 as it is, there is a
Hmm.
thing for like high level athletes. The problem is that like,
what defines high level athletes, I guess that would be
And,
the
like-
question. Because if you're
how
certified
do
with
you
your
get-
black badge to get IPSC, then
well,
is
and
that
how do you
considered
even
high
get
value?
into like, if I can't buy a pistol to get in at the lower levels, how do I get to the elite
Mhm.
levels of the sport? And like
Yeah.
there are feeder sports where it's like you may start off shooting like 22 target
Yeah.
pistol at silhouettes at the club, like as a recreational thing on like a house league Saturday.
Well, so I
Gets
think what's
you-
going to end up happening is that we're just going to all have to become closer friends, and you're going to
Yeah.
have to start,
Yeah,
being
and-
able to borrow some of that stuff. Be like,
Well, and that's how
"Hey,
you're
oh,
going to
you've
get
got
some
that."
people
That's-
in, but like
yeah,
if you
that's
can't
really all
even
that's gonna
get
happen.
one to get into the thing, and they like it's incredibly frustrating, but at least it leaves an avenue open potentially to do something about it. But like, yeah, there's still a lot that's wrong with this. And I mean, I also kind of agree that like, much like in the COVID thing, it was the tactic to like put out something that was more than what they had wanted
Oh yeah, for sure.
and see what the reaction was. And then, if they got away with it,
Yeah,
run with
Yeah.
it.
and
If they don't, they pull back and go, okay,
Oh,
we've
yeah.
listened and now it's more palatable. But like the thing that I'm sort of getting from this, and maybe it's just that my tinfoil hat is too tight, but minority government
yeah,
reaching about the point where it's probably going to call an election. So if C21 was to proceed with the amendments, they agreed that a bunch of consultations needed to happen because the amendments in there were far more reaching in scope than the original bill. So in
Yeah.
order to do that, they were going to have a bunch of consultations across the country, which would have taken time and money.
Yeah.
They would have to have freed up budget stuff in order to do that. By removing those amendments, the bill doesn't need to get approval from finances and stuff like that, and it can basically just pass because it's almost already at the end of its thing, which means that in theory it can be passed very quickly prior to an election, which then, if it does, means that the Liberals go into an election making good on one of their main campaign promises over the last several elections.
Oh, what reserve did they
Yeah.
give clean drinking water to? I didn't know.
I mean, I didn't say all of their promises or the ones
But
that
you
they
just
should
said one of
probably
them. I
focus
figured
on.
that would be
Yeah.
one.
No,
that's
it's
like
the
at the top
it's
of
the
the list.
it's the
of
one
good
to
ones
ban
I thought.
all of the scary things from the people that
Okay.
are most statistically proven to
Yeah.
not commit crimes.
yeah.
So-
No, it's
But
it's
there's
pretty
also
brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that like I don't know. My brain is exploding by this,
Yeah.
but I was gonna say to the effect of what you were saying before, Pierre. You know, in terms of the good old boys that, you know, shoot their little boom boom sticks, you know,
Yeah.
and the range is a social club and all that stuff, and you just kind of hope
Yeah.
that they
Well,
stay on board that
Yeah.
advocacy train.
Yeah.
I would be shocked if they did, because
Shocked if
they
they what?
didn't,
Sorry.
if they stayed
they-
on that train, if they stayed on that advocacy train.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, they
yeah, no,
basically,
No, I would
They're
be super
hopping the
shocked
fuck
because,
off. They're
well,
off.
because I mean, how do we get here?
Well,
Them
exactly.
not noticing.
by those
know?
people
Yeah, those
just
exact people
giving
being
concessions.
really comfortable with the
Yeah,
idea
well,
of,
that doesn't
and
affect me.
if-
I don't own a machine gun. I don't need that. I don't own this. So I
yeah,
don't.
but it's
and
not
yeah,
even
yeah,
that.
and-
Like, it's folks are so comfortable. Like, if you
Yeah.
want to look big picture, folks are so comfortable with the idea that the government has your best interest at heart.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
no point has that historically been true.
No,
No
if
point.
anything,
And
anytime
in
you hear
recent
that, it should make you
history-
more nervous.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I was listening to, speak of 75 Hard, I was listening to Andy Frisella today. And that guy is like always entertaining to listen to. He's wild. Obviously, he invented the 75 Hard.
Yeah. Patriot as fuck.
Yeah, he is in the middle of Missouri. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. That tracks. But he was saying, he's like, you know, what's the difference between, and this is American, so like I'm gonna kind of stay away from it. He's American, but it just resonated a little bit with me. Because I think that Canada is at risk of being like this, because, and track with me here. So Canada is in part the international, in the international position it's in is because we're neighbors with the States.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, like
Then we
have
should
a s-
adopt a lot of their stuff. That's
Well, we're-
Sure, but like we're like the largest trade
Yeah,
partner,
culturally, economically,
probably the
everything. We're
closest, biggest border, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, one of the largest
Yeah.
land borders in the world.
and an undefended border at that, mostly, right?
Absolutely. So, like, I mean, there's this dynamic
unless
that,
you don't have
know,
your
like,
max papers and you're trying to come do some shopping.
well, that's a whole other
But,
thing. But
Yeah.
like, you know, that's trash. But you know, so for the most part, our success is not like is intrinsically connected somehow to
Yeah.
the US's success.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the statement that he made today was that, well, I don't know the podcast I was listening to, but was that the only thing that keeps the States from being a third world country is the guns. Right.
100%.
And I kind of think, and I mean, I don't know how much, like, he's a bit of an extremist, obviously. But I believe that that was also in reference to, you know, the whole China flyover thing. And I think that these are just some of the things, like maybe it's not a physically, the guns are what's keeping America from being third world, but I think it's some of the mentality that goes with it.
Yeah.
Like folks in the States, and I did have a friend tell me this, and he's from New Hampshire, and we don't necessarily understand it here in Canada, and this is hugely detrimental to our desire to defend, I don't want to say our rights, because it's not necessarily on paper as our rights, but defend what's ours, right? What we believe is ours to have. We didn't already have to fight the government for it, right?
Yeah.
So it was
Well,
kind
and
of,
that's
so we
yeah,
don't
I
know
mean,
how to do that, and we kind of
that's-
suck at it.
that's how their nation was founded,
Absolutely.
by telling
100%.
people to fuck off and stop
Mhm.
telling us how to do things. And like,
And
you
we
know.
forget about that. That's only like 250 years ago.
and
right?
then
So
Very short time ago.
absolutely,
and-
it was a very short time ago.
and not even that, like not long after that, they fought an internal war,
Yeah.
which was more or less about one part of the country telling the other part of the country how to live their life as well. And those people were saying, no, fuck you, stop
Yeah.
telling us how to live our life.
Absolutely.
like, That
Canada-
mentality is ingrained,
absolutely.
whereas we were just the happy colonists that went along with it.
And you know,
Yeah.
like we were
still
kind of like gently handed our technical
Yeah.
freedom and things like that. And but as Canadians, like we need to do a better job. Like we have a short memory.
Yeah.
And we kind of in the chat, Louis Riel would beg to differ. Agreed. But
Yeah.
most people don't know who Louis Riel is or what that's
No,
about.
that's because they've been told that he
Right?
was a racist asshole and that we
Absolutely.
shouldn't support and we should take everything down and
Yeah.
refrain from referring to anything from them because they're all asleep. Like they're,
Yeah.
like with this C21, right? Like they are going to put this provision in that, they'll allow Olympic sports or whatever. Just
Well,
like
no. That's just like whispers on the street. There's nothing
No,
even
no.
official about that.
It's in there that
it
they
is.
will have
Is
a
it?
provision, but they don't
The provision. Sorry. You're
Yeah.
right.
they don't clearly
Yeah.
define what
What that
that
looks
is or
like.
what the pathway to that is. So it's like,
Right.
okay, is it only Olympic sports? Because like if it's only Olympic sports, like that's 22 target pistol basically is it. Like,
Yeah. But also, is it
But-
going to be like the provision we currently have in the Firearms Act that technically you can apply to have a permit to
Yeah.
carry, right?
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
they don't hand it out, but like
yeah,
there's a
it's
provision there. For, it's there.
It's there, but nobody
So-
can get it. Yeah.
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 So is it just going to be that like we have this thing? So it's like, okay,
Well,
fine, you want to
that's-
be Olympic. Like, so do you have to get like, do you have
Yeah.
once a year does the RCMP
Well,
go
and
sit
what is
somewhere
the
or whatever?
conditions? You're right. What
Well,
are
they,
the
they
know,
haven't
but, like-
clearly
getting that?
defined any of that stuff,
so,
really.
So is it a
yeah.
thing
Mm.
where once a year you have to go to a range of some sort and people are going to assess how you do an IPSC course and they're going to say you're good enough that you can keep doing IPSC. Like you can't train prior
Well-
to it because nobody can have a pistol. So like, what are the
Yeah.
regulations?
Well,
around
exactly.
that?
How
Is
do
it
you
just-
how do you get into that? How do you get into the feeder
Yeah.
sports? And that's the
Well-
thing. So like IPSC as of right now is not an Olympic sport, but it is part of a committee that is on the peripherals of Olympic sports. So
Sure.
like
right?
this is
And I
where
mean,
they go to in order to effectively become an
You
Olympic
have
sport.
qualifiers,
Maybe.
right? They're kind
Yeah.
of like maybe a
Yeah, you get to
qualifier.
this level and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
maybe you get to the Olympics. So like it's on
No.
the track to do that if they decide to take it on. But like even then it's like, okay, so like if this qualifies because it might become one at some point, is it only going to be like, okay, well, you have a pistol so you can compete in the thing, or you already compete in it because you already had a pistol, so now we'll give you a provision in order to purchase more things because you're in it. But if you want to get started in the sport, ooh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's a whole
know.
other like
Yeah.
yeah
You have to know somebody. It's going to be a bit of
Yeah.
an elite
Yeah.
kind of
But,
thing, right?
so
Because
that all
you're
depends
going to
how
have
those
to have a
provisions.
friend that has a pistol.
well yeah. And are you going to have to like be top 10, or
Yeah.
you could like, or are we all going to become IPSC shooters and all compete for last place once a year,
Yeah.
right? Just so
Yeah.
that we can continue to keep buying pistols.
And is it going to come to the point where it's like, like most other provinces in Canada, right? Like I think Ontario is the only one where you can own a restricted,
Yeah.
restricted firearm without actually having to be part of a gun club,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? Like
yeah, that
most of
was
the provinces,
that was
like, if you-
challenged and overturned, saying that like, well, why? Like you can still go shoot at ranges without being a member there. So why would
Yeah.
you need to be a
Right.
member?
So, but now it's just like, okay, so do you own restricted. It's like, do you have to be part of a club? Do you have to put so many hours in? Like,
Yeah.
what are all these rules around these provisions?
Yeah.
Or is it just one of those where it's like, technically in Canada, you can apply to have, to have
Yeah.
a carry
You can
permit.
apply, but like you're
Yeah.
never gonna
Like-
get it. Yeah.
No,
Well,
you're never
so
going to
this
get
is,
it,
I
right?
guess kind of the situation, I guess the situation that this kind of surrounds is like the idea of, pay attention, people. Like
Yeah.
as this legislation comes out, as these changes are coming out, like
Well,
pay attention to it, because even if it doesn't impact you, it's going to
it
at some
will.
point. It
absolutely.
will.
I mean,
And
like
it's
look
going
at
to lead
the
into some like serious changes.
well, and to bring it back to the fuddier members of our shooting community. I mean, when the Ordering Council came out, and everyone was like, whoa. And then like the FUDs weren't super worried because it didn't affect anything. And then someone kind of was like, wait a minute, this affects some hunting rifles and shotguns. And then they got all panicked for a
It
moment.
did.
And then like
And then a
Bill,
tweet came
Bill
out from
Blair
Bill Blair.
tweeted. And then like all of a sudden, like the minute that like, they were assured that it didn't affect them, they were silent for the last 2.5 years. And then all of a sudden, those shotguns and rifles popped up on this list again. And then all of a sudden they got energized again. And now it's gone away. And like the day that it got away, for those of you that are on the Twitter, the Liberal MPs had this boilerplate statement that a good chunk of them put out, and I will read it for you right now. C-21 is the most progressive piece of firearms legislation in a generation.
This one?
It's crucial we get this right. Liberal members of SECU recommend we withdraw G4 and G46. We'll be listening to Canadians and working with colleagues across parties to create a law that keeps Canadians safe. They will be working with people to create a law. So they have not given up. This is just a delay to get this one part through so that they can come back later. That is what they're saying in that message.
Yeah. And I mean, like, we've got a very simple solution to keep people safe. Is like, how about we start changing self-defense laws in this country? How about we start giving people, you know, within
personal protection ability.
Yeah, personal protection ability. Like, you know, and I mean, like I said before, like, I'll say two quick things. One of them is, I think I've said it before on a previous podcast or whatever, you know, when this Bill C-21 came out, like, somehow a few people I work with, you know, are hunters. They're pretty much hunters. They don't target shoot or anything, but like, you know, I've mentioned I'm on this podcast and we talk about, you know, guns, government, blah, blah, blah. A few people have listened to a few episodes and they're like, oh, okay, you know, the gun ones, they just skip over because they have no interest, but they're like, the other stuff, you've got good points and everybody, and they like it. So somehow I've become like, when there's a gun question, they just like, hey, Pierre. And I'm like, okay, what? So one of them I convinced to get, at least put the application in to get a handgun before that freeze came in.
Sure.
Looks like there's movement on it, and I'm like, hey, good for it, because he's not part of a range. And I was like, technically you don't need to in Ontario. Is like, if you've got the money to gamble for a little bit, like, do it. And the other one was like, right when C-21 came out, he gave me a shout. He was like, so you heard about what's going on? And I was like, yeah, I heard what's coming along, you know, and everything. He's like, who should I look at supporting? And I'm like, oh, so now because it directly affects your 12 gauge shotgun,
Yeah.
or your, you know, your 303, like, now you're like, where should I throw my money to prevent this? You know,
Yeah.
and I gave him a few things. I was like, there's a few things going around. I was like, look for reputable. I was like, don't just find like the first Google search. I was like, you know, do some research. I was like, reach out to the gun clubs. I was like, you know, all those things that you're part of. And then after all that, and I was like, where the fuck were you in 2020?
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, and I'm
was-
like, and I've said, I was like I was stupid and I didn't do my restricted course when I did my non-restricted course.
Of
So I was
course,
like,
of course.
and I don't have a pistol in my house. I don't have a restricted weapon. You know, I've been wanting to do it, and I'm like, because of the 2020,
firearm.
and I'm like,
We don't use the word weapon, otherwise we get some nasty
Well,
feedback. Got to call it a firearm.
I will go weapon because it's been a little dry lately. Maybe we'll get another interesting one.
Oh, I like
Um,
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, right. So a firearm, whatever, whether it be a pistol, an AR, short
Sure.
barreled rifle, or whatever. I've never participated in IPSC, IDPA, service rifle, 3-gun, all the stuff that involves that. But it's something that I'm interested in trying at some point when the funds are available and the time is available. That I'm like, but at the same time, I'm like, there's no reason behind everything. So I was like, I've been a strong supporter from day one.
Yeah.
You know, 2.5 years later, when they're coming after your Browning
But-
PPS, now you want my advice. I'm like, where the
Sure.
fuck were you 2 years ago?
Sure. Well,
And it, yeah.
folks like that, I think it's good that you're talking to people and you've kind of become like a little bit of a, you know, maybe a voice in your community
Yeah.
about it, because, well, again, so for me, I'm like super ignorant or naive when it comes to a lot of this topics. I'm very casual gun owner, you know, all that stuff. But I've like, I don't know, I'm a farm kid, so I've been around it my whole life, that sort of thing, right? But you guys are way more, you know, everything, not quite, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But either
That-
way, the way that I look at it is that, when you see, it's not about the thing. It's about the government manifesting certain controls and measures that are extremely concerning, right?
But that's the problem is being a gun owner, you understand that concept, or even being a person that's like, I've gone shooting with my friend. I'm like, hey, do what you do, right? Whether they're a firearms owner or not. It's the fact that 90% of people in this country don't understand the steps and procedures to even just not even get a firearms license, but just the steps and the money and the long waiting period. My friend is coming up to almost a year since he's sent his firearms license paperwork in. Still hasn't heard anything. It has, like, someone's looked at it, but he doesn't have anything. And he asked me, I was like, have you ever been in handcuffs, detained, this, that, blah, blah, blah. All, we went through all the things that I'm like, you'll automatically get a no. Squeaky clean record, this, that. Almost a year to get his license, and it still hasn't come through.
Yeah.
And 90% of people don't understand all that. So they just, the news told me, or, the government has come out and said that, guns are bad. So they just support that. They don't bother doing the research. They don't bother doing any kind of education. If you walk up, like, it would be nice to have, events of some sort,
sure.
like CCFR put one out saying, range day, but I'm sure there was nice support of some places, but like, I don't think those people that are anti-gun went to those events to actually see how anything goes. And
Of course
that's
not.
the problem. I'm like, we don't have the capability of getting people that are, I'm anti-gun for these reasons, right? And it's like, and those reasons could be legit, or some of them could just be like this weird news that they think it's like the US where everybody's got an AR-15 tucked in their pants. But it's like, well, here, come to the range, come meet the people, come watch a match.
Yeah, but folks don't want to,
No, and people don't.
like, if you're
that's the
against
problem.
firearms because you think that they are, like, degrading the moral values of society and extremely unnecessary, like,
so
and
this
this is the application though. Like, so many people are against something but don't understand the other side of the perspective.
Yeah. And so I want to just quickly, in line with what you're saying, I want to address the comments here in the chat about calling it a weapon, because I think it falls directly in line with this. And this is the problem.
Okay.
While I agree with the sentiment, we should be able to call it whatever we want, and the time for being polite is not here anymore because we need to be firm. Language is important.
Absolutely it is.
The reason they call it a weapon is because weapons are bad. Weapons are used to do harm to other people.
Yeah.
I don't do harm to other people. And like, marketing is kind of an important part of this whole thing.
Absolutely.
And we've done a very poor job of it. Like you're saying, like, the media hears assault weapon ban.
Yeah.
They're calling it that on purpose. That's what the anti-side is saying.
Absolutely.
So that the general public that is too stupid.
Well, and this is why like, I chuckle when firearms owners are saying it's not even an assault weapon, blah, blah, blah. No, but what you're saying, Gavin, is accurate. That is a very triggering, pun intended, word, right? And those are very
and
bold
we need to
words.
Do better.
Yeah, because the other side of it is that we are like, we got to do better as people who want this stuff to stick around. Marketing ourselves as more than just intolerant.
And I mean, I'm not.
There is a lot of a lot of people, and I was actually going to say this, Gavin, like when Pierre was talking, there's a lot of people out there who, Pierre, you were talking about like folks not coming to those range days, folks not coming out to the range to understand. Those, like, ranges are kind of hard. It's kind of a tough culture to get into. And if the only thing that you're hearing about in regards to firearms is from the news when a crime happens, you can understand how that would be a little, that'd be really daunting. That's the only experience that you have is like, what's going on. Do you want to
go and hang out with a bunch of people with weapons, or do you want to go hang out with a bunch of people with sporting equipment?
Well, and I think that there's some
or soy lattes. Soy lattes are definitely a big winner.
Yeah.
But sporting equipment, that's a great way to like project a
'Cause-
different image,
Yeah.
right? Or, you know, you
Yeah.
have a good example, like at the range that I just joined. You know, I went there last year
Oh.
because a couple of friends of mine, they're on the executive, but they were having a fish fry. And like most of the people that I saw at this fish fry, not
Yeah.
at all members, you know, that
Yeah.
even have firearms. They're folks
Well,
that,
and-
Yeah.
you know, they're just like, oh, hey
Right.
guys, like we haven't had barbecues in a while. Come on out.
Yeah,
Right.
and I mean,
this
as
is
someone
the
who's
community thing.
traveled a fair bit with firearms,
Yeah.
you know, when I go to the airport and I check in and I have to declare that I am carrying one to the people at the desk, I don't use the word gun and I don't use the word weapon, because
Yeah.
those elicit a response from people that overhear it that is not something that I want.
Yeah.
So I don't want their first time potentially being exposed to something like this to be a negative experience.
Yeah.
And so, like, if I check in and go, hey, yeah, I've got a weapon, everyone's going to start to panic. If I say, hey, I've got a gun, people are going to start to panic. If I go, yes, I'd like to declare that I'm carrying a firearm, people don't panic as much because they
Yeah,
don't
there's
hear
a-
that word in
Yeah.
context with
Yeah.
bad things happening. Like, no one's like, there was a crazy person on the loose with a firearm that shot. No, they're like, he had a gun. He had a
Yeah.
weapon.
It's
So,
true. And
like-
this sucks. Like all that
Yeah.
to be said, and you know, like
well,
the
and we don't
chat
need
is
to be
accurate in terms of like
pushovers,
wanting to be able to say what we want to say.
yeah,
And if
but
you're
we don't
from
need
that
to
community,
be,
you understand it. But
we don't need to be a
again,
pushover either. Like, we don't
Yeah.
need to just like bend over and go, okay, government, yeah.
But
Oh,
imagine
yeah.
trying to explain
Like-
something to some
At
okay,
least
so
spit on it.
well, yeah. But imagine trying to explain something to a toddler or somebody who's never
Yeah.
experienced something. You know, you
Yeah,
have to
it's-
explain it in words that matter, and that kind of sucks. But
Yeah.
like
It absolutely
it's kind
does,
of like
but
it's kind of like a lawyer explaining something
But-
to you in legal terms. You're
Yeah.
gonna be like, what the hell? Like
that's where we
don't,
just need to get better
right?
at using the correct
Yeah.
terms ourselves. And like, part of the
Yeah,
problem
right.
is that, like, if you have any sort of military training, in all of their training, they refer to it as a weapon because to them it is, because of the purpose behind it. The
Yeah.
purpose behind it for us as civilians that are engaging in sporting
It's a sport.
activities,
Yeah.
it is sporting equipment, it is a tool, it is a firearm, it is a
Like,
gun,
it-
if you will. A gun in and of itself isn't anything. Just like we say that like assault weapon is a made up term. Well, it's like, yeah, because it's the action that goes along with it that makes it that. Therefore, then, like,
I would say that
weapon in
they-
general, like,
Yeah.
is a hammer a weapon?
Absolutely.
It depends
But
how you
if
use
I
it.
smash somebody in the
Yeah.
face with it and I'm gonna go to
Yeah.
court for it, they're gonna say that I hit them with a weapon.
Well, and this
So-
is kind of something to think about, like in terms of being maybe a little bit more sympathetic, is, you know, if you want to see like real change,
Yeah.
this is something that they say is very applicable in places like, example, North Korea. The biggest way to kind of save North Koreans from the situation they're in is providing information on what's going on in the world,
Yeah.
right? So the same, like I'm not
Or
gonna,
send Trump
like-
back in.
well, I'm not gonna like, you know, try and compare the severity of the situations, but if you think in terms of that, like a lot of people are listening to a narrative that is being impressed upon them.
Yeah.
So you gotta be the
Yeah.
actual information bringer.
Yeah,
And that
I mean,
sounds like a lot of extra work, but it's like,
Yeah.
if you want to advocate for the cause that you're championing, you kind of got to learn how to speak their language and say, hey man, you know, like,
but-
no, this is what I do. Like you, and even just having a conversation, like how many people have you talked to? If you've got your RPAL, how many people have you talked to in casual discussion being like, yeah, actually, I'm probably one of the
Well-
most secure individuals around because I have background checks done on me extremely frequently, you
Yeah.
know, like
That
all the
and-
time. And they're like, what? Are you serious? I was like, yeah. Like you can go and you can take your PAL or your RPAL and you can get
Yeah.
pretty much anything else a government issued ID is going to get you because it
Yeah.
is a government issued ID.
and I'm just going to address some more comments here.
Yeah.
From it. So,
Mm.
you know, getting mired in semantics serves no purpose other than allowing the enemy to dictate terms. No, I'm not allowing them to dictate terms. I'm not following into that trap that they call it a weapon, so I refuse to call it a weapon. They're the ones calling it that. To me, it is not a weapon because I do not
It's a
use
tool.
it to defend myself. I do
Yeah,
not
it's a
use it to
tool.
commit, war on other people. That is what weapons are for. I don't do that. So that's me not falling into it. So I dictate my own terms. And I understand your sentiment because you don't want to give another inch. Neither do I. But also, if we refuse to play the game, we're
Yeah.
going to lose the game, because whether
Yeah.
we want to play it or not, we are forced to play it because this is a political thing and we all live in the political system. So unless you want to take all of your stuff and move out into the woods far away from everyone where no one knows that you're there and no one knows
Yeah.
what you've got, even then, that's only going to last so long, and
Yeah, it
it's
kinda
not
sucks.
disingenuous or dishonest when I
Mm.
refuse to call it that, because like I said, to me, it is not one of those things. So me calling it a weapon, in my opinion, is being dishonest because that's not what I use it for.
Mm.
And
And, well,
like I
and I
said,
would
it's
say,
not about being a pushover. We can still be firm
Sure.
and we can still be polite, but being polite doesn't mean
But
say
there's also
please and
some,
thank
like-
you. It means just don't be
Yeah.
a cunt.
yeah,
Just like
sure.
Pierre's shirt. Don't be a cunt. Right?
Um,
We're not
Like
allowed to.
Worst word
we don't
ever.
we don't need to be abrasive,
We're
right?
not
Like,
allowed
Right,
to say
and the
that word
other-
on
screaming at the other side isn't helping get our point across.
Well, and I would say as well, like, and I'm not picking on anybody here,
No.
but in the straight terms of, for discourse here, referring to allowing the enemy to dictate terms. When I think of that though, I try to remove the fact that, if I'm using a little less abrasive language, it's usually going to be for individuals that are believing a narrative. I don't consider those folks enemy. What I consider, because enemy to me is where you start getting in that weaponized terminology, in my thoughts anyway. But like the government, I don't consider the government necessarily my enemy either. I just think that they're manipulative, and I'm not
but
going to let them
that's-
tread on me.
Well,
But
and
when I
we-
start using things like enemy and, stuff like that, it's just, it brings a whole different level to the dialogue that I'm like, I'm not there.
Yeah.
I don't
And
have,
I mean,
I don't necessarily have
all-
an enemy on, like I have the enemy in my mind is the ideology.
yes.
So
But all conversations with people, especially when you're having discourse like this, is manipulation. We're all trying to get our point across to the other person and at some level have them agree with us.
sure.
So strategically, it is in our best interest to do that in a way that is palatable to the other side of this disagreement, whatever the
Yeah.
disagreement is. So I can either take a firm but polite approach and use less aggressive terminology and try to bring them over to my side, or I can just be like, fuck it. But that fuck it attitude, to a certain extent is fine. But when it affects you and you need to do something.
Well,
Yeah,
and I
I
mean,
agree.
I had this conversation with some people just the other day, and not everybody is meant to be like, not every person is meant to be the one that's engaging in the other side.
Yeah.
Like
mean-
everybody has a role in, the advocacy and the defense of,
Yeah.
what we believe to be our rights,
Yep.
in our property. Everybody has a different role to play. And I mean,
Yeah.
I personally take a stance of like, I believe that discourse and like dialogue, even having awkward conversations are like one of my favorite things.
We should have more of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have no problem because I believe in like the social aspect. Does that mean? And I believe that, like the government is just a group of people. It's just a machine that, like our humanity is driving. And so there's a lot of good people and a lot of ignorant people out there. Right.
Yeah.
So having these conversations is so important. And
Well, I mean,
there's a lot of folks that have zero tolerance for these conversations. And I kind of
Yeah.
just see it like, if I can't have tolerance for individuals that maybe don't see my side, how can I expect them to have tolerance to see my
Well,
side?
exactly. And I mean, and the downside of
Is it
this
that
is that
way?
like, I've been to a lot of town halls and this and that on this subject because this is something that I am, quite passionate about and affects me directly in several levels, and a lot of friends of mine. And, I've been to the ones where the news people are there,
Yep.
and they never bother to interview my friends that are there that are very
Sure.
well spoken and educated and articulate themselves well and are in a suit. They always pick the person that is loud, is using
Sure.
aggressive terminology, and is just generally abrasive because the media is trying to push their narrative.
Absolutely.
I don't want to be like, we shouldn't be the spokesperson of our group because the group has never elected us to be that.
Yeah.
And I know this is sort of ironic coming from this podcast where we are generally quite offensive and speak out on a lot of things, but also like there are times when like an individual, whether you want them to or not, is speaking for the group and will color the whole group in a certain way.
Absolutely.
And I don't
Well-
want to be the one that's doing that. And at times it sometimes gets the best of me because we're all human. But I try to be a better person.
Well, and I
Yeah,
think like, sorry, Pierre, go ahead.
So there's two things with that. Like, one of them is like, so 90% of everybody that is misinformed on anything that we advocate for as legal firearms owners don't understand anything we do. And that is partially on our fault and partially because the media talks to that guy that's got his tinfoil hat and 6 months worth of canned beans in his basement and thinks
Don't be
that-
bringing that into it.
no, but
Me and my
those-
beans, okay? Leave
Yeah,
us
but-
alone.
so that goes with it. But I mean, as responsible firearms owners, like, we need to find a good spot that is okay to have a conversation with someone that just doesn't
Yeah.
understand it. Be invitive. Get if you've got a bunch of guns and ammo's crazy to try and find right now or whatever, you can still buy a semi sort of okay decent 22, and ammo for 22 is still fairly cheap. That get one of them, get people out shooting, inform them, get all that stuff in their hands, and get them to understand the concept of like the joys of like, hey, just plinking
Well,
in a backyard of some sort in an illegal manner is fun to do, as well as we need to figure out how to break that stigmatism where it's like
Yeah.
if you tell someone you're a gun owner or you're a sport shooter, most people are like, oh, you're a hunter, okay, they're okay with it because they think you only shoot your gun 3 times a year.
Sure.
And Bambi comes out, or Bambi's dad, and you shoot it and you're like, oh, okay, I'm okay with that. But we need to figure out that stigmatism and figure out a way to get people, not the people that are diehard set in their ways, but just the people that are ill-informed and not properly informed, and figure out how to get those, break that barrier. Like, I had a conversation, with my boss recently that I said, I was like, so I work a Sunday to Thursday schedule, so I'm off Friday, Saturdays. And I'm like, well, this year, I was like, I just purchased a new rifle that I want to try out a few competitions. And I'm like, those competitions run on Sundays. So we were out of town, we were sitting, and I said, I was like, hey, look, like there's some stuff coming up that I'm like, I want to take a day off or two. I was like, it's something I've been wanting to do for a while. And then we had a good 45-minute conversation about, well, what do you mean it's a competition? So, explained, I was like, it's a long range thing. I was like, it's going to be on a range. I was like, I'm probably going to be at the bottom of the stack because I've never done it before. But I was like, it's something I've been interested in for a while. And he started asking some questions, and we, nonchalantly, like off company time technically, because like we were both out of town. So he paid for supper, but I'm like, it was a casual supper. Like, I wasn't punched in, and I'm like, I was kind of semi sort of wearing a shirt like I'm wearing tonight. Because I was like, nothing company related. I was like, we're just, a few people sitting down to have supper. So I'm like, it was nice to see it. And he was like, well, like, let's figure out how to make those arrangements. He's like, is something you want to do? Like, go for it. And I'm like, so you need to, you know, there's going to be some people where if you tell them you're a firearms owner, they're going to be like, oh my God, I never want to see you again. I never want to talk to you. You're no longer coming to my great grandkids' birthday parties. And I want to figure out your whole bloodline. So I write everybody off and everything. And I'm like, as much as I'm against that, I was like, that's their right
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be ill-informed and everything. But I'm like, for me to
But-
force anything I believe in.
But
is-
to be fair, like what you're saying here, it is their right to also be informed and disagree.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I think the chat is also like where we're gonna see, like we've kind of seen in the chat too, where maybe some of the listeners, and I'm assuming here, and this is my perspective, have done a lot of that stuff, you know,
Yeah.
like had the
Well, and
conversations
they're
and,
fed
you
up,
know,
right? Like, and I
absolutely.
get
And that's,
that.
and that's an absolute thing.
Yeah.
But that's where we kind of need to go back to this idea of like, different people have
Well, and
different
that's-
roles in this
and-
process of how we're
And this
gonna
is where,
fight the
like,
battle.
I mean, I've said it a few
you
times, but I
know?
really think I need to reiterate that, like, being polite doesn't
Mm.
mean compromising or conceding
No.
anything.
No.
Saying no
Yeah.
is not rude.
No, absolutely. And I
How
mean,
about you do no?
yeah,
But how about you? No, like,
Yeah,
be
exactly.
firm.
and
But you, like,
there's
I don't need
there's
to go
gonna
like,
be some
no,
people.
fuck you, you're retard. And like,
Yeah.
you don't need to do that. You can just be like, no, I'm not doing that.
And because,
Yeah.
you know, like one
know?
of the listeners like mentioned, you know, the last 40 years gun grab, that sort of thing. You're not wrong. And like, you know, I
Yeah.
even talked to my dad's generation is, you know, he doesn't even like they never had to get licensed.
Yeah.
And you know,
No.
the licenses had different things, and there's that evolution and everything like that.
Yeah.
My,
Some
my
of the
dad was
people that-
military for fucking 22 years.
Well,
and like,
absolutely.
there was never a gun in my, like my dad did
Yeah.
use the gun in basic training, and what he did in the military didn't require him to use firearms often, like ever. Really.
Sure. Sure.
So like my dad was like, I'm not for guns. Like my dad
Yeah.
was just like, you know, he wasn't,
Yeah.
he's like, whatever, the hunting thing, like lots of people on my mom's side of the family hunt and everything. But like my dad was not pro gun. I'm a
Right, but I
firearms
mean-
owner, and like more than one person in my family is. And my dad's just like,
Yeah.
do you? Like, that's not for me.
Sure. But I mean, I guess kind of what I'm saying though is that like there's going to be every aspect, you know, your dad is
Yeah.
not like the only person that I've heard that story from either, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to see lots of folks that, you know, maybe have had experiences where firearms have not been used in the realm of sport shooting or hunting,
Yeah.
right? And
Absolutely.
you know,
Everyone's
that's
life
gonna-
experience is
absolutely,
different.
it's gonna add to it. But those are the folks, and like I think this is where sometimes we can get a little lost, is like there's gonna be people that you can expose the firearms world to and the sport shooting world to that have never experienced it or don't know it exists because it has been going on for so long. We're losing some of that information, some of that exposure, where, you know, like our dads and grandpas and stuff like that. It was very common for everybody to have everything from like a 22 to a BB gun, you know, like you could be living in town and they're still shooting crows or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of people were at least exposed to that. Whereas now, like the multiple generations coming along behind there
Yeah.
have zero idea. So those are the ones where you have like the traction for these conversations that you were talking about, Pierre, like having the talks, right? Because they've lost that information. Now, some of the folks in the chat who've been fighting this fight for a while and maybe are a little fed up, a
Yeah,
little
I
like
get it.
unsure of, you know, like maybe lost a little hope. You know, staying active in your principles is so important. And
Yeah.
that's okay. But you don't have to convince anybody, because some of the people that you obviously have been talking about, they're never going to change their mind.
Yeah.
Right. And it's hard, like it's very hard when you see your government being one of the biggest perpetrators of not changing their mind, you know, like, and we do see that. I don't believe personally that we're going to see any form of change or success coming from, you know, the firearms community advocating the government. I don't think so. Where I think we're going to see success is the firearms community exposing themselves to the mass populace, and the mass populace just not getting on board with the trash that's being brought out by the government. That's
Well,
what
exactly.
I
And that's,
overthrowing the
and that's
government.
that's
Yeah.
the not getting on board with their narrative, right? Like they're
Absolutely.
gonna tell us that like we want to arm all of the children with weapons, and if we come out and go, yeah, we want weapons, Like, and I
Right,
don't mean to keep
exactly.
harping on that particular
No, but
thing,
it's
but
just
like,
a
it's such
great
an
example of
easy,
vernacular, right? Like
yeah, you're
use
like,
of that.
no, that's not what I want. Like,
Yeah.
yes, I would like every citizen that wants one to own as many firearms as they can afford.
That they
And you
feel like
name
that
it,
they
yeah,
want
and you
to.
name it, they should be able to have it
Yeah,
with
and
the
I
Well,
think
and I
they
mean,
should be able to have fully automatic firearms and everything
absolutely.
else. I
Do
mean,
you want a
especially if
belt
if
fed
we're going to
50
keep the
cal?
licensing,
Yeah,
we've been vetted
absolutely.
every day. We should
Yep.
be able to own all of the things because we've already proven that we're willing to jump through some hoops and have a daily background check. So why can't I
Yeah.
own one?
Absolutely. And
Like-
And
well,
I mean-
and that's the thing is that maybe that's the generational change that,
Yeah,
you know,
and I
brings
mean, and in the
people some hope.
60s, in the 60s, we could, and you could shoot it
Yeah.
on your own property. So it was
Yeah.
never a problem. If anything,
Absolutely.
it's the societal collapse that has caused all of the things, and not like we have less access to firearms now, and there's more crime than when we could
Absolutely.
just go and buy
And-
a machine gun with no license and
Well-
use it wherever we wanted without magic pieces of paper to take it across the country, and less crime happened. But the family unit was stronger.
Yeah. Well,
Shocking.
and I think that that's maybe where the frustration that some of the, you know, like feedback in the chat is coming from is that, you know, watching I guess I just assumed that anyways, but I can understand how, you know, sitting there watching for the last 40 years or however many could be
Yeah.
a little disheartening when, you know, you're not just frustrated with the government, okay? Because I think it's fair to say that everybody in this sphere is frustrated with the government, okay?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people
that's the understatement of the decade. Yeah.
But there's a lot of people outside of the sphere that are now very frustrated with the government as well for a lot of reasons too. That is like, and I think it's important. I think it's important because like people have to challenge their government. Their government is not going to be perfect because again, it's just a machine. It's a mechanism that people are inside of. It's the people inside and moving the mechanism that kind of suck, right? But that's fluid. Those people come and go, right? And I think that, you know, like maybe the shift of how we're exposing and how we're talking about, you know, the things that are taboo is really important, right? And does it mean that I think we're going to be successful? No, but I don't think that you can give up.
Well,
I don't
and
think that.
and that's our biggest problem is that like for the longest time, the majority of Canadian firearms owners were worried about safety, I'll call it.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to let their neighbors know that they were into this or whoever know that they were into this. And so we didn't do a very good job at marketing ourselves as everyday Canadians from all walks of life, which is what we are. And so the media was able to dictate what a Canadian gun owner was, which was never a good thing because guns were never in the news for good things, really. They were always bad things, right?
Yeah.
And that's why they're calling it gun crime and, you know, suspects found with weapons and all of the things. And so you get all of these terms that get popping around and they're associated with negativity to do with this.
Yeah.
And now we're finally starting to like, you know, come out of the shadows and show ourselves as everyday Canadians because we have some advocacy groups that are doing good work. And like that was sort of the whole mandate of the CCFR when they started, because like the hardline approach of other organizations like the NFA and No Compromise were not exactly palatable.
Yeah.
While I appreciate their sentiment, and I too do not want to compromise, there are different ways to go about that. And I think changing the perception of the average gun owner, legal gun owner, is an important part of having average people that are not gun owners look at us and go, oh, it's just a sport that they like to do and they're perfectly safe and they should have no restrictions whatsoever. But when all they hear day in and day out is that one gangbanger shot another gangbanger in Toronto.
Yeah.
And they assume we are the same.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that to what you were saying, Gavin, like I think it's important to have, you know, the No Compromise people right alongside the people that are willing to have the dialogue.
Yeah.
Right? Because
we need
again,
that hard, we need sort of all
absolutely.
ends of that spectrum, and you need the hardline people at the back
pushing
and, you know, and maybe making us seem
there's
more palatable
there's-
by comparison.
yeah, but there's also
But,
a
like-
spot that there's a hard spot that all of us
Yeah.
agree on,
Yes.
right? So someone needs to stand by that line and be like, when you get here at the,
Yeah, you need
They're-
someone
they're-
that forming a solid foundation at the back of the
Yeah.
line, holding the line and pushing forward.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, so like going on a whole side thing about, getting people exposed to guns and everything. I think of a story. I want to say it's three, maybe 4 years ago.
Mm.
We had picked up getting our firearms license and started hunting or whatever. And I went and got, my daughter a Savage Rascal single shot 22 bolt action, because it's a gun that's like the
Yeah.
whole gun, I think, is like 16 inches, right? Like she was small. And I'm like, I'm gonna get her into, all up for, she'll come bunny hunting with us. If she wants to come hunting, like, come on, like she's all in there. She's holding the legs while we're skinning, whatever. Like, I'm like, if you don't want to do this, you don't have to come with us, but she enjoys it. So there was a whole side thing about someone at her school said that they were going to shoot her. So like
What?
something that, yeah,
Okay.
right. Like we're
Sorry.
talking, she was like first, maybe, yeah, I think first grade, right? Someone had said, third grade. Sorry, been correct.
Still.
But yeah, so someone said, well, I'll get a gun and I'll shoot you. And the teacher, had kind of like sent an email just being like, hey, look, this happened in case she comes up or whatever. But they also said like she handled it very well and this and that. And like she actually told the person that, our what we teach at home, because I'm like, we hunt and everything. I'm like, you only shoot what you're gonna eat. So I'm like, if I have a license to shoot a squirrel, we shot a squirrel and we barbecued it and we were like, that tastes pretty good, so we keep eating squirrel, right? Like same with deer, moose, whatever. Like we only shoot what we're gonna do, whatever. These are tools. This is how you use them. You need to be very safe, very efficient, all that stuff. So the teacher was kind of like, she was not freaking out about it, but she told this person she was like, well, you're not supposed to eat people. Like the only thing you're supposed to shoot is what you're gonna eat. So like if you say you're gonna shoot me because you
Oh,
want to
that's-
eat me, I have a
That's
problem
kinda
with
cute.
it, right?
That's kind
Yeah.
of
So,
cute.
but and the teacher was just like, she was very good about it, and I'm like, we have firearms at home. I'm like, technically,
Yeah.
she kind of has one, but I'm like, for us, they're tools. So I'm like,
Yeah.
we teach her that they're tools. You need to be very safe with them. There's a time
Yeah.
and place to use them, and all that stuff. But the teacher was just like astounded at it, right? She was like, oh my
of
god, like
course.
she didn't come in freaking out, like nothing. And I'm like, no, I'm like, she understands the concept behind it. So
Yeah.
it's like, and I think that's the giant disconnect where I'm like, people
Yeah.
finally get to an age where they can do something for themselves and they say, hey, I kind of want to try shooting, instead of, I'm not saying we should have shooting competitions for third graders in school, but I mean, it should be something that's a little more out
In the
there for
States,
people
they
to,
do.
that used to be a thing here as well.
But they
But
still have they still teach or have there was, I don't know, saw like a picture of, was it Wisconsin or Missouri? They still have like a gun range in the school and it's still active
Yeah.
and they still use it.
Imagine
Yeah,
living in a free country, or at least a freer country, because America isn't exactly free, just freer, at least some states.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
that'd be amazing.
U of T used to have a gun range in the basement of Hart House,
Yeah.
right in Toronto. I mean, there used to be a gun range at Union Station in Toronto. It used to be a thing that was everywhere, but
Oh,
apparently not anymore.
yeah, there's a lot
So
of things
it's-
to do with that. And I mean, we could sit and talk about this all day. Like it's
We
It's
do.
definitely
I need more
something-
whiskey
At
if we're
least,
gonna
at
do
least
that.
once a week. Yeah.
I know, no, but I mean, even just
Yeah.
like how we're communicating about it. And I guess because we're getting past 10 or whatever. I don't know if there's anything else
Yeah.
we want to talk
No,
about.
I was going to say we should probably wrap this one up, and we'll
Yeah.
keep it short and sweet. And
But I
whatnot.
mean, for the most part too, I think to wrap it up, the reality is just keep communicating people.
Yeah.
To people that, firearms are not dangerous, if handled properly.
Yeah, when used in the
And-
appropriate place and time, they are perfectly safe.
Yeah.
And there's fewer
Yeah.
injuries in the shooting sports than there are in pretty much every other single sport, which is why we can get things to insure. Like,
Yeah.
think of how much it costs to insure your car for a year, and when you get one of the organization, like any of the three major things, when you get your $40 or whatever a year membership, that includes liability insurance for you doing anything
Absolutely.
lawful with a gun.
Yeah.
Imagine any other insurance for $40 a year, and that like isn't, and like, and some of that money still goes to advocacy and not just the insurance. So
It
that means
does.
that it's less than that.
Absolutely.
If you want to
If we were so dangerous, our rates would
know.
be skyrocketing, but they're not.
It's true.
Right. And I mean, if you want to talk statistics at that point, we're probably a lot safer with the firearm than most people that get paid to have a firearm on their hip for a living. I
Mm.
think they have more shootings than we do.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, they're
I think
mostly
that's the thing that a lot of that
No, I
is.
get
I
what
think
you're
a lot of
saying.
that is complacency, though.
Yeah, I do think
And
that that's a thing.
self-inflicted.
Like,
Yeah,
But-
you're not wrong. Like, you even talk like CBSA, they don't really have any training.
Yeah,
no.
You know, like,
And there's no incentive
Policing?
for them to get
I don't know what
training
the
outside of work.
policing is.
no, because it costs money, and it's
Yeah.
like they
it-
just have. I think the police just have qualifying, right? Like, do they do that annually?
yeah.
Yeah,
But like, I
it's
But
mean,
even
I don't
then,
think
supposed
that,
to be. Yeah, that's up
Yeah,
for
I
debate.
don't
A
think
lot of
that
the things that they
there's-
do, depending on the agency, what you do to qualify doesn't necessarily
Yeah.
mean you have safe handling skills. It means that
but-
you're able
yeah,
to put
exactly.
10 shots on a piece of paper at X distance in X amount of time.
Right, but I will
And-
say that like if I don't go to the range for a long time, like
Yeah,
if
you
there's
see
been like a
depletion.
while, you
Well-
do see like a reduction. And this is why like I think that ranges actually do a great job, which is regulated,
Yeah.
right? About like just instructions, like, you know, oh hey, this is how we carry here. You know, this is how we like operate here and like
Yeah.
enforcing that. And I think that's some of the stuff that people need to just expose
Yeah.
others to is that, you know, like, hey,
It is very, yes. Well, like,
And
yeah,
and-
I
I mean,
like to trigger all of the people that went through the firearm safety program with the Acts and Prove thing, and like the E, examine the bore.
oh yeah, no, there's some like
yeah,
it's a good thing that there's bore lights and like rods out there now.
Well,
I would
it's
way
one of
rather
those
do
things that like I
even the bore light is fucking useless. Like,
well, but it like
Yeah.
okay, so I understand like you absolutely do not want something in the bore when you fire the firearm because that could be dangerous. I agree 100% with that. But the people that are at the range and they're shooting and then they go to put their gun away or they pull their gun out of the case and do that thing, like they go through the whole Acts and Proves thing and then they get to the E and then they, especially when it's a pistol, and they point the thing at their face.
yeah, to
look
me that's always
down
been
the
extremely
bore.
counterintuitive.
And it's like,
yeah,
okay, I know this is what you were taught and I understand the reason behind it, but let's go to the A in the Acts part of this. And that's
Yeah.
always assume it's loaded. And then the C is control your muzzle direction at all times. So you have broken
And it's definitely not to point it at your head.
two rules
Yeah.
right there.
That's for a different day though, Gavin, because like
Right, but it's the same thing. So it's
Ugh.
like you go and do this, but like if people need to understand that like we have rules that are in place, and the rules are in place for the lowest common denominator that is coming out to participate in the event to keep everyone safe. So if we were all at a even acceptable level, we wouldn't need as many rules, but we need so many rules because some of us are complacent and
stupid.
don't do the things, and like it should just be enough to go, don't be an idiot.
yeah.
But
And-
like, and if you break any one of the four, golden firearms rules, nothing bad is probably going to happen. Even if you break two of them, like not assuming it's loaded and pointing it directly at your face, like the E and Acts and Prove tells you to do, because you've managed to keep your finger off the trigger, like
Yeah.
you're safe. Now, if you start breaking multiples, then it becomes a problem. But like, again, yes, I agree. People should come out to the range to experience it, to see what it is all about, and be exposed to the fact that we are very safe, sane, rational people that take more safety precautions than are required just to ensure that it is a
Yeah.
fun
Yeah.
activity for people of all ages.
Yeah.
And I mean, going on a quick little side tangent before we do the outros. Like, I think a giant part of the problem with everything is access to firearm ranges.
Yep.
There's one not too far from here. We've been trying.
The old boys
Someone that-
club needs to go.
Yeah, so like, there's someone that lives in town that we've chit-chatted with in a little bit, and we know, and we had mentioned that we got some new guns and this that, showed it, and they were ecstatic that they finally, after like 8 years, got into the gun club down the road, because they only took 2 new people this year.
That's
So I'm like,
insane.
Yeah,
I have to say
like,
that, like, so the range that I just joined, and I know I'm in a totally different area as
yeah,
you, but the range that I just joined, they actually don't, you don't have to be sponsored anymore to go in, to go to
no,
it.
so
because
you don't
they
have
were
to be
like,
sponsored here, but it's just like they take this many people,
Yeah.
first come,
Which
first
is-
serve. So
yeah,
it's
which
like
is
a
like
Facebook
kind of
link.
wild.
Yeah, like a Facebook thing comes out at like 10 o'clock on this like random day. It's like first, like, for some reason they're like, we'll take 3 people this year. So the first 3 people get in, unless they pass like that qualification and the safety, being safe on a range
Yeah.
thing that they go through or whatever. But like this person's been trying for like 8 years to get into this range, and he's ecstatic that he finally got in. And I'm like, that's another giant problem we have, is that people that want to do many things.
I
have
don't
nowhere
know
to go.
though. I don't know if that is that across the industry or is that just regionally specific?
It's the other problem is that there's no standard even across the province for how things work, because
No,
like,
so if they don't want more than
rules-
300 members, you're not getting
Yeah.
more than 300
every
members. And
every
that's
club
just
is
their
its
weird thing.
own every club is its
Uh-huh.
own entity that makes up its own rules, and some are share based, others are not for profit organizations, others are privately owned. Like, everything is different, and then every club has its own internal rules, and even with like the CFO, depending on when their range got certified, there may
Has
or may
different
not
rules.
be different things.
So like
Sure,
it's
okay.
it's all over the board, and I'm like, that makes it even
Yeah.
more complicated. I'm like, if you want to get more efficient and be more familiar and everything with your-
then throw in
Yeah.
like the retired people with nothing better to do than complain being on the board and everything else. Gun clubs are amazing, but they are also the worst place ever.
the only
Well-
reason they're amazing is because that's where the only place you can
Yeah.
technically shoot a restricted.
No, but you know what? Like that's
Yeah.
that's another element, okay? So, we've talked about this is the how-to of
Yeah.
firearms promotion. Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously talk to people about it, be
Yeah.
open
Yeah.
about it, but be positive about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be
And
positive
don't-
in your interactions and
don't
use the
be
right
abrasive.
vernacular. Yeah.
Don't be
Use appropriate vernacular.
Yeah.
And then the other side of it too is get involved.
Yeah.
Like if you don't want to be the one that's talking about it, like get involved with just like the infrastructure of these
Yeah.
ranges, because
There's
here's the gig is that a lot of the time not-for-profit situations, they don't collapse due to lack of membership, they collapse
Well-
due to lack of leadership.
that, and
So-
like,
Lack of
any
competency is what I
volunteer
like to
group
call
is
it.
at the
Yeah.
mercy of the people that volunteer. So like, if
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
have a particular skill set, you can probably put that behind whatever cause it is that you want. So like,
Most
know-
ranges still are not on anything
Yeah.
more than Facebook.
Yeah.
Facebook is
Yeah.
one of like, okay,
I don't
so
have Facebook.
statistically, Facebook is mostly used for like my parents' generation, maybe the older, what's your generation called again, Gavin? It's like
I mean,
Gen X, is that what it is?
yeah, or like
Technically?
Y
I
or
thought we-
something. I
no.
mean, there's
No,
like
I
a weird.
think Y is like the
There's like
millennials.
it depends on
So-
who you talk to. Because like I'm
You're
on the
the
like some will
lost
say that I am like
generation?
in the weird like
I think
I'm
you're the
not Gen
weird in
X, but I'm
between.
not a millennial. I'm like
Yeah.
the weird micro
Okay.
generation that's there. But some
Yeah.
people say that I'm like right at the beginning of millennial, which I do not like. So I think that it's that
I'm in
weird
the
micro
millennial. You think I
generation
like
where
it?
it's like
Yeah,
I have like
Okay.
I'm still old enough that like I remember the time before the internet and playing outside, but
right.
I got computers at a young enough age that I am not completely inept when it comes to them.
Sure, sure. Well, so that's the thing. So Facebook is actually mostly that
Yeah.
bracket that you were just talking about and up. Whereas
Yeah.
like, you know,
The kids are all on the TikToks
exactly.
and everything else.
Well, and I mean,
yeah.
don't get me wrong, like I have no interest in participating in some of that. But even just like engaging in conversation to bring up a new generation of firearms users or enthusiasts, like if that's all you can do, or you know, like, and I find it funny, like, you know, I'm a busy person. I think everybody technically is. There's not a lot of people I know that just sit at home doing nothing.
Well,
You
if
know,
they
there's a
are,
couple-
they're definitely not people that listen to this podcast and are
Well, sure, sure.
contributing members of society, but
But-
that's for a whole
Yeah.
other episode.
That's a yeah. But spend a couple hours a month volunteering
Yeah.
with your range, volunteering
Yeah.
with an advocacy group. You
Do
know,
something
like-
to support and further your cause, whatever that
Absolutely.
cause is. And like I said, like,
And do it with integrity as if you're representing a brand.
yeah,
If you have no idea what that means, like
yeah, like
ask
if you're
somebody who's in brand management to give you like, oh, hey,
yeah, the
if you
30
were to
second,
rep-
like,
yeah, like
yeah.
if you were to rep a firearms thing, how would you do it? You
yeah,
know,
like,
and then
whatever your thing
they'll
is,
tell
like, I said,
you.
like you can participate in some way. Like if you're a graphic designer, you're like, well, what can
Absolutely.
I do? Like, I don't know, maybe make up a new logo for your club and some flashy posters
Like-
for their next like open range day. Like,
gear, right?
right? Like there's all
Yeah.
kinds of things that you can do. Like, oh, I'm just a simple mechanic. Okay, well, like your club probably has like some equipment
generator.
that needs to get like
Yeah.
fixed up to make things
Yeah.
run.
And
And
guess
then
what?
the
If you're a
money that they
mechanic,
save getting you to do it means that it can be spent doing something else. So like there's a million ways to contribute.
and 95% of the time, if you talk to anybody that's in the trades, whether you're a mechanic, drywaller,
Yeah.
plumber, or whatever, like you might have your one thing that you're like, I'm a pretty good mechanic. I can probably get almost anything running. But at the same time, I might not be able to build you a house, but
Yeah.
I'd probably be able to like figure out how to
Yeah.
build that one
Well,
wall.
that
Yeah,
might
yeah,
like,
yeah.
if
like,
you
you
don't
know-
if you don't get involved, somebody else will.
Yeah, and they're
Yeah,
probably
they
gonna
may
suck
have-
at it.
Terrible
Worse.
qualifications at the thing that they
Yeah.
volunteered for, but they're the
Yeah.
ones that volunteered.
Yeah.
And I
So-
mean, to be fair though, like I personally think that every volunteer is super valuable. It's just the
Absolutely.
more volunteers you can get, the
The
less
more-
volunteer burnout you're
Yeah.
gonna have, and the
Yeah.
more
Well, and then
skill set. And that does
You
lead,
can be a
like-
little bit more choosy then in who you assign to certain roles, but like
But
when there's
also-
only one guy applying to be like the financial guy and they have
Yeah.
zero financial literacy, you're stuck.
And they
'Cause you're
suck
like,
at
well, they're
math.
the only one that like
well,
have
I
no
mean,
one else,
that's
so-
like that's a whole other dynamic there.
But
But to kind of
that's
like
where,
come
like,
for
the more
full
people-
circle.
the more people that volunteer,
Yeah.
the more people you have to pull from, and you can start
Yeah.
to go, you know
Mhm.
what? I appreciate you, and we will find you a task
Yeah.
and direct that energy in the appropriate way, but this is
Yeah.
not the way to do this.
And I mean, you'd be surprised at how much just like a person pushing a broom inside the range house,
Yeah.
like that kind of thing, you'd be surprised at how much
But you make
impact
the
that
place
has in
clean and
terms of like
tidy.
advocacy and in terms of like, you
Yeah,
know,
Like,
just being part
I'll
of
do
the
it just to collect the
conversation.
brass.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but,
there's
like,
I'll do
that
it just to
too.
keep the brass.
But
Right? Like,
There's that
And-
too,
and
keep
that's
the
right?
place clean and tidy, then it makes it a place that people want to show up. They can start
Absolutely.
taking pride in it. They start bringing other people there. Other people come and they have a good time and
Yeah.
they want to get involved. And it all starts with something simple like
And
literally pushing a broom.
absolutely. And I mean, you start seeing things like the CCFR put out range day, like really
Yeah.
put a focus on it this year.
and we went to our local one and it was
Absolutely.
fantastic. Chatted with
Yeah.
the guy for like a
And
good
the more
45 minutes.
volunteers, the
and-
more volunteers you have,
Yeah.
the more that kind of stuff can actually
The
happen.
bigger the events can get, the more
Absolutely.
awesome they get,
And,
and
you
the
know,
less
like-
work people have to do because more hands makes light work.
Absolutely, because again, not many people are making money off this. So
No?
And then
It's-
people
Some
can
people
see
do it-
that it's not two guys and that's it. You come out and you go,
yeah,
man, there is a whole
Huh?
like diverse group of people here that are all into this thing. It is not just
Yeah.
weird old creepy white guys with guns. It is
Yeah.
like everybody.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and it's crazy what people will do for free if it's something they're passionate about or if they pass
Yeah.
time of theirs. Right. Like the
Absolutely.
amount of effort they will put into something free. Right. Like I fix, equipment for a living and this and that, blah, blah, blah. But like there's things I do on the side that have nothing to do with that I'm like, I will like do this for like 10 hours a week for free because I'm like, I enjoy it. So I'm like,
Awesome.
people that have, the income or whatever to get into, any type of shooting event and sport of whatever, like it's all gravy on top of their full-time job. And I'm like, you know what, if I participate and I do a little bit, to help my local range that supports what I do on my spare time is worth its weight in gold, because like that's my getaway. That's my little time away, whether it be from family, from work, from life or whatever. But it's just like once a week I've got 2 hours that I can just go do something and disconnect and reground myself and everything. I'm like, people will give up hours of their free time past their work to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, all right.
It's
So
true.
Absolutely crazy.
we'll sum this up. C21 bad. Removing the amendments, not a win. So hammer on the gas, don't back off, and hopefully stick all together.
Yes.
Don't be a cunt, and get out and volunteer.
I love it.
Right? Is a good summary?
I'd say so.
Awesome. All right. When we're not podcasting, Liz, where can the listeners find you?
You can find me on Instagram, the Rebel Wanderer, or you can follow my gym, which is basement_gym 2022, I think.
There you go.
Yeah. So I'm never ungilded, so don't check that.
Pierre, where can people contact your other half?
Yes. So if you want any funny shirts, like potentially the one I'm wearing tonight or the ones we have referred to, Off the Wall Customizing, I think we're on the Tickety Talk, Instagram, something else. Off the Wall Customizing at Gmail. You'll get in touch with her. Potentially on Sunday nights, most nights, I am on the Copycat CPP Prepper podcast. If you want to reach me on Gilded, figure out who I am on there and personally message me, because I have given up on that app because I forgot about it for a little while and there's like 800 notifications and I was like, I'm not dealing with this. So yeah, that's how that went.
What? Perfect. You can usually find me on Instagram as well, UrbexGTA. I need to get better at using the Gilded, but like we do have it. Some of the other panelists are on there frequently. A lot of our listeners are on there frequently, building their own little community. So feel free to talk amongst yourselves. We'll even give you a topic. You like that one, eh?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Apologies to Rod Gataka. He couldn't make it on this evening. He's a little busy dealing with all of the retraction of the amendments and all of the other things going on. That we'd like to remind you all that you are a small fringe minority with unacceptable views.